Hey guys, it's Claudia here. Just a quick disclaimer. Some of you may have noticed the scratchy scratchy noises in the background of some of our episodes. No, you are not imagining things. We currently share a recording room with my 4 ferrets, and apparently they very much want to be involved in the podcast process. So really sorry about that, but shout out to Busby, Lilith, Peach and Truffle, makers of the scratchy scratchy noises. Sorry guys, thanks.
What's up, witches?
I'm Claudia.
And I'm Jess.
And welcome to True Crime Coven. Hey babes, how are you today?
Hi, I'm good, thanks. How are you feeling?
Just so everyone knows, that was babes, BBZ. I'm not...
Babes.
That was not a... What, babe?
Alright, babes. Alright, babes, you feeling better today?
Well... Babes, to be honest with you. No, I am. So I've been really sick, which anyone who would follow me on Twitter, which I don't know why anyone would, it's honestly a mess. It's a hot mess over there. But I will constantly moan when I'm sick. I'm such a baby. I'm like the worst nurse in the world.
I saw on Instagram today, yeah.
All I do is...
All week.
I'm so good at moaning. They say the nurses are the worst patients But yeah, so I've been dying from a chest infection, not COVID. I was ready to full on yeet something out the window if I got COVID for the 3rd time, to be honest.
Yes, I definitely would not be here if you had COVID.
No, just a chest infection, which made me feel
little chest infection,
like absolute rubbish. But yeah, no, I'm feeling better now.
Good.
I'm not as croaky as I was. How are you, Jessica?
Oh, well, apparently a mess, according to you.
Well, that's just a Jenna Marbles quote, I'm sorry.
No, I'm all right. Bit offended by your views on my pizza toppings last night.
Right, so Jess went out for dinner with her husband last night, her husband Aidan, and she put up on Instagram, so this nearly ended the podcast, which...
Yeah, Claudia told me that she was never going to do a podcast with me again.
Yeah, I mean, and I feel like we should get a poll going, right? So... Jess has on her pizza, no, not pineapple. We're not going to get into the pineapple pizza debate. It does not belong. But
I think it does. But
this girl's the worst. She really is Jessica Messica.
At least if we have different pizza topping, we never have to share a pizza. Do you know what I mean? We can have our own pizza.
True. So. I mean, I think we knew that anyway. Yeah. So Jess thinks it's acceptable in society to have prawns on a pizza.
It was delicious, prawn and garlic, and that's it. Delicious. It was very garlicky as well.
I mean, garlic, brilliant. Prawns, I mean, obviously I don't eat meat anyway. Yeah. But like prawns, even when I did eat meat, it's just that texture on a pizza, man. That don't go.
It does. I just really like seafood.
So today, Messica, I have a case that is not for the faint-hearted, but it is also something that's like always fascinated me. And as I say that, people are going to be like, what? Because today we're going to talk about a cannibal killer.
Oh.
And when I say it's I find cannibalism fascinating.
Probably should have started this episode talking about food, should we?
Oh, yeah. Didn't even put those together.
Yeah, no.
Yeah, when I say cannibalism intrigues me, I don't mean like I'm interested to give it a pop. But I think...
I like that. Won't eat animals, but yeah, I'll give a human a try.
But no, it's always something that's fascinated me. And even like... God, I'm just sounding worse. Even as a kid... Like,
oh wow, dark.
I don't mean like a 3-year-old, but like as a kid I was quite interested in true crime. Jess, why are you laughing so much?
Oh no, I had to burp.
I just thought it was hilarious.
I mean, it is weird that as a 3-year-old you...
No, I said not as a 3-year-old.
Sorry.
But so I was quite interested in true crime and like spooky shit from a young age. I can thank my mum for that, I think. Who legitimately didn't say to me about the Loch Ness Monster, is it real? She brought me up believing it was a real thing. So when I found out it was like a
myth.
Well, I don't believe it is. But when I found out that it was like sort of a cryptidy type thing, and like it's like, does it exist or not? My little mind was blown. 'Cause to me, my mum was like, yeah, there's like a place up in Scotland where like this monster lives. Anyway, I'm getting off tangent, but sorry. I grew up already interested in true crime and stuff, and whenever there was like cannibal cases, I always found them a bit more like...
Yeah, I think it's weird because like it takes a lot to kill someone, but to kill them and then eat them...
I don't know, it's just sort of like the next... Like a lot of people get off on killing for various reasons, and we
Yeah.
will discuss them over hopefully years.
Yes.
But yeah, the next step of like that then
Progressing.
it is a step, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
So yeah, today
Yeah, I've watched Hannibal. Have you watched it?
I love it. Man.
Yeah, it's really good. Just to see like the way he just prepares food like it's normal steaks and then just feeds it to his guests.
So today we're going to talk about someone called Graham Fisher. Know anything about Graham Fisher?
Name does not ring a bell.
I feel like there's someone famous called Graham Fisher because when I was researching, it kept on coming up. But like,
Oh, okay. No.
But also, just a disclaimer
Yeah.
that when researching, I actually found another killer by the name of Graham Fisher, but that one was spelled Graeme,
Okay.
whereas our guy is Graham Graham. So I guess it's just like a little PSA that if your last name's Fisher, don't call your son Graham.
Yeah. Is that like a English spelling, American spelling?
So I tried to look that up, and I think it might be Scottish English, but
Oh, okay.
it appears that actually it's a bit like Sean. Like it's,
It's,
I mean, maybe Sean.
maybe traditionally it was Scottish English, but now it's just personal preference.
So unfortunately today the trigger warnings are pretty severe.
I can imagine.
Not just with cannibalism, but we will also be discussing rape and sexual assault. And I'm not going to go into details, but there was a point when I noticed that in order to write about this, I had to repeat the word rape quite a lot. And if that's something that's really going to be difficult for you, my heart goes out to you, and 100% come back next week for some spooky stories. Come back for a different case. It's absolutely fine. Whilst researching this case, it was hard to find out much about the early life of Graham Fisher. All I could find was that he was born in 1974 and was from Bromley, which is in southeast London, where I grew up. And I don't know if it's just like me finding these cases that are from literally like where I went to school.
Yeah.
Or what? Or maybe just South London really is as bad as everyone says it is. I have no idea.
You got to think more crimes happen in like densely populated areas as well.
I guess, but this is like the outmost London suburb.
Yeah.
But it is also the largest London suburb.
Yeah, but you think you're going to have more people
London
there
Borough.
than in like Devon.
True.
So.
And I suppose different mixes of people.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I'm looking at my childhood all differently. And then all else I could really find about his early life was that he had quite an unhappy childhood.
Okay. I mean, I feel like a happy childhood would probably not lead you to, or you'd hope not lead you to murder and eat people.
Yeah, you'd hopefully be more well adjusted, I guess.
Yeah.
But mental health.
Yeah.
So as not much is known about Fisher's early years, today's story really starts whilst he's in Broadmoor Hospital in Berkshire, England. Now, for those unfamiliar with Broadmoor, I don't know how much you know about it, Jess.
No,
really.
I'm not.
I know a little bit. I actually find it really fascinating. So
Fair.
I think I'm just slowly outing myself as more and more of a weirdo. But you're all here listening, so clearly you're all weird too.
I mean, that's why you do it, because this is an interest of yours. So,
True.
Yeah.
So it's famously a high-security specialist psychiatric hospital. They provide assessment, treatment and care for men over the age of 18 from London and the south of England.
Oh, so it's just a men's hospital?
They did used to do women and men's. I probably should have looked up when they changed that. It is one of 3 high-secure psychiatric hospitals in England and Wales, which treat people with mental illnesses and personality disorders who present as a high degree of harm to themselves or to others. Now, as I said, Broadmoor was kind of like fascinating in itself.
Yeah.
I feel like at one point you could perhaps do a little bit of a deep dive into it. Messica.
Maybe, yeah.
I'm going to call you Messica today. I'm going to try and not make this just like me waffling on about Broadmoor.
No, that's fine.
But whilst many patients there are placed there through the criminal justice system, it is in fact a hospital and not a prison. It has 284 beds, and some famous ex-patients include, though perhaps infamous would be a bit of a better term.
Yeah.
So you've got Yorkshire Ripper Peter Sutcliffe.
Yeah.
He was there before he died.
Yeah.
The child killer John Strafford. We can cover it.
Yeah, I was going to say name doesn't ring a bell, but...
And you'll definitely know this name. London's East End gangster Ronnie Cray, who is, of course, one of the notorious Cray twins, his brother being Reggie Cray.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's got a
Yeah. So
history there. So, in the year 2008, Graham Fisher was a patient at Broadmoor Hospital. He'd been transferred there in 2001, halfway through a 5-year sentence he was serving for indecent assault on 2 Spanish students at knife point in Eastbourne in May of 1998. And I know we've said this before, and I will say this again and again, but sentences for sexual assault, indecent assault, are just so short. 5 years for 2 at knife point.
Yeah.
I know this was like 25 years ago.
That's violent and as well, because I feel like if you're holding someone at knife point, you are intending to use it.
Yeah, even if you're not, there's a chance you're going to use it. It's there.
Yeah.
Yeah, we could go off on a tangent about that as well.
How old was he at this point? Because that was quite a lot of dates.
Oh, sorry. So we'll get into...
Oh, okay. The actual timeline of it.
Yeah. Fisher had been transferred to Broadmoor under the Mental Health Act after he was deemed to be a grave and immediate danger if released back into the community. And it was there that he stayed, thankfully, for much longer than the measly 5 years that he would have stayed in prison. And I say thankfully because in 2008, he would make a dark confession to officials at the hospital. Fisher told staff how, in January 1998, he had killed 40-year-old Claire Lechford and 75-year-old Beryl O'Connor. He also admitted to the attempted murder and rape of a Czech student in January 1998 and to raping a woman in her early 40s on 2 separate occasions in 1991.
Oh, poor woman.
Yeah. Just poor women.
Well, yeah, women.
Just imagine, though, if he hadn't been sent to Broadmoor and instead was released from prison in 2003, I really believe there would have been potentially many more victims.
Yeah.
So already we're talking about 6 women.
Yeah.
So
that he's willingly confessed to as well.
Well, you've got the 4 that I mentioned that he's just confessed to, and then the 2.
Yeah.
And so you were asking about timelines. He would have been just 17 years old when he raped his first victim in 1991.
Oh my God. That's so young.
Exactly. He told staff that he was confessing to these crimes now as he could no longer live with what he had done, telling a doctor, "It's so hard to live with it in my head." And so, let's discuss the crimes that Graham Fisher just couldn't keep to himself anymore. So, not much is known about Graham Fisher's first victim from 1991, except that she was a vulnerable woman in her 40s whom he knew.
Wait, and he was only 17?
Yeah.
Oh my God.
She resided in his hometown of Bromley, in southeast London, and he unfortunately raped her on 2 separate occasions. The prosecutor for the case, Richard Barton, would later detail in court how Fisher forced his way into the victim's home the first time and then raped the woman in her hallway and living room.
Oh.
He returned for a second time just days later.
Oh my God.
Where he found the woman sleeping in her hallway. And I think that's where the whole, she's vulnerable.
Yeah, if she's asleep in her hallway.
Yeah, we don't know in what way she's vulnerable, but sleeping in your hallway.
Yeah.
Something's going on, bless her.
Yeah.
And so he stripped his clothes off, put his hand across her mouth to stop her from screaming, and proceeded to rape her yet again. Fisher said that he had been overcome with a strong urge of anger, which had made him carry out these attacks. The victim never reported what happened to the police, although she did tell members of her family.
I think, again, that just shows that she was a vulnerable person, and the fact that her family didn't encourage her to go forwards.
But then rapes are underreported.
Yeah.
And I think especially they're going to be more so now with what's happened in the last year.
Yeah, but still I feel like there are still people who are worried to come forward. They're scared. If you're scared for your life, you're not going to want to come forward.
Well, he's forced his way into our home twice.
Also, I know you said you didn't know what her situation was, but say she was like an alcoholic or a drug user and she did tell little white lies, what's to make her family think, oh, shit, she's
and
telling the truth.
often that demographic does have a mistrust of the police already, or does perhaps have a bad relationship.
Yeah, they've got a stereotype and a stigma around them as well. So women and men underreport sexual assault and rape historically and presently, and I think it's only going to get worse. So in 1993, Fisher then moved to the Isle of Wight. However, just a year after, in 1994, he was handed a 2-year prison sentence for assault and false imprisonment after he tied up his ex-girlfriend and attempted to strangle her. Oh my God.
He also burnt her son on his genitals.
Oh my God, that's horrible. That's really escalated as well.
Prison sentence.
How old was the son as well?
I don't know.
No.
So it seems like there's a lot of details that have been omitted. And I think that's because of his mental state.
Yeah.
But 2 years.
Yeah, that's barely anything for attempting to strangle someone, which is attempted murder.
Yeah, what's the outcome there?
Yeah, holding someone hostage. And who's to say that he wasn't trying to murder her son when he set his genitals on fire?
Well, we don't know if he set them on fire.
Well,
but like burn them.
But yeah.
So let's just change that earlier victim count from 6 to 8, by the way.
Yes.
He was released from prison in 1995, after which he relocated to Kent. Many people say Bromley is Kent, a point of contention. Moving between Maidstone and Gravesend, both of which are towns in Kent. Yeah. Until he decided to up sticks and move down to the seaside town of Hastings on the south coast of England.
Lovely.
Yeah, I've definitely never been.
No, me neither, but a nice little seaside town.
And it was whilst living there that he became neighbours with both Claire Lechford and Beryl O'Connor. Claire Lechford was a 40-year-old woman who lived alone in her basement flat in Cornwallis Gardens, Hastings. She was reportedly a recluse, but in all honesty, there just isn't a whole lot more out there about her.
Okay.
Which, I find it really difficult when there's not much about the victims, and there's not much about any of the victims in this case.
I guess it's probably because he confessed his crime so much later.
And there's probably all different factors at play. The reason it upsets me is purely because I don't want to sit here and talk all about these horrible people who commit these horrible crimes and not make the victims into people.
Yeah.
Because it's so easy to be like, yeah, this person was killed and this person was killed.
Yeah.
But actually, that's a person. They were someone's loved one. They were their own person. They had a family,
they had friends.
Yeah, they had hopes and dreams and aspirations. And even if they didn't, they were a whole world of their own.
Yeah.
And I understand why people do, we do it. Like, people will sit there and talk about Jeffrey Dahmer and Jack the Ripper and not talk about as victims because there is just more known about the murderer. And
and I feel like the victims, like you've already been like, oh yeah, and then there's 8 victims. Like, they do just become a number, unfortunately. Yeah, and I really never want it to be like that. So sadly, I can't sit here and talk about Claire and all the things she did in her life and all her loves and interests, because it's just not out there. Yeah. And also, it's probably also due to the family. They want to sit and talk about their loved one amongst themselves. They don't want to go to a newspaper to tell you. Yeah. So that someone can sit and discuss it. It's understandable. Oh, yeah, definitely. I guess as well, you don't want to, like, if that was your mum or your nan or your auntie or whatever, you don't want to Google their name and then everything that comes up be about their murderer. Exactly. So I 100% understand why people wouldn't want to tell you everything about them. And I just want to say now as well that if anyone ever states that they don't want... If I ever start researching a case and there's something out there where someone says, I want people to stop talking about this, like a family member, I will not go further with that case. People do talk about the efficacy of true crime discussions in general. Yeah. And by no means do we ever want to be disrespectful. But obviously there's always going to be a slight element of that, unfortunately. And I hate that. But that's why we try and trigger warn. We try and respect the victims. And above all else, I would love to see her and tell you all about Claire, because I'm sure she had amazing qualities. But there's not much out there about her other than that she's a recluse. And I hate that that's the main thing I can tell you about her. Yeah. Because she was so much more than a recluse, I'm sure. My neighbours probably think I'm a recluse, but within my social group, I don't think people would describe me as that just because I don't talk to them. Exactly. On January 18th, 1998, Frank Lechford, Claire's father, called round to her flat, as he did every Sunday. The two presumably spent the day together, and Frank left as usual. However, that Sunday night would be anything but ordinary. Just hours after her father's departure, neighbours noticed smoke coming from Claire's basement flat. East Sussex Fire Department rushed to the scene, where, upon entering the property, they found 2 separate blazes. The first was found in the living room, where the sofa was engulfed in flames. Wow. The second fire was found in the hallway, where a sofa cushion cover was alight after it had been put over Claire's head. Oh my God. She was found laying on her back, badly burnt, with a pair of shoelaces tied around her neck and clothes piled on top of her, likely in an attempt to further fuel the fire. Despite the ligature around her neck,
Home Office pathologist Ian West stated that her cause of death was smoke inhalation, meaning that she had been alive when the fires were set.
Oh, that's horrible.
Which must have been terrifying. Obviously, this whole thing's terrifying, but it's just imagine.
Part of me kind of hopes that because that he obviously tried to strangle her, and
hopefully she was unconscious.
Hopefully she passed out by that point, so she didn't realise what was happening.
We can only hope, can't we?
I think burning to death or drowning are like the two worst.
They say that drowning's meant to be quite nice because you kind of like pass out before it.
Yeah.
But it's that initial panic. It's the... Yeah. I don't want to know I'm going to die.
No. Oh my God, no.
No, thank you.
But I think burning must be the worst because it's just pain. I can imagine it being so painful. Like,
even,
we've all burnt ourselves.
And even smoke inhalation, you burn the inside of your like membranes.
Yeah.
It's horrible and it swells.
Horrific.
So when you burn, it can swell afterwards. Additionally, there was no evidence that Claire had been subjected to any sexual assault. With no signs of forced entry, Inspector John Levitt of Hastings Police believed that a killer had likely found their way in through the unlocked front door. And as nothing appeared to have been stolen from the flat, the motive seemed to be just to kill.
Oh, that's horrible.
Fisher would later admit to also cutting off a piece of flesh from Claire Lechford's arm and then eating it.
Mm-hmm.
And just 8 days later, on January 26th, 1998, firefighters would be called out yet again to a disturbingly similar scene. This time at a flat only 100 yards away from Claire's in Cornwallis Garden. Beryl O'Connor, affectionately known as Dawny, had recently celebrated her 75th birthday and was a widow who lived alone in her top floor flat at Clifton Court, part of Holmesdale Gardens in Hastings. So, like, I looked where if these took place and they're, like, very close to the seafront.
Oh, okay. So probably quite nice apartments.
I would imagine.
Yeah.
Yeah. On the day of her murder, she made a strange phone call to a friend, and I don't know how relevant this is, but you never know what to
No.
Where she told them, I'm coming down. All right, I'm coming down. So I guess maybe they think she was speaking to someone or like someone had like knocked her buzzer and like she let them in.
Yeah.
I think that's the relevance
gist.
of it.
Yeah.
Hours later, a fire alarm was heard sounding in the building, and a neighbour of Beryl's saw smoke coming from her flat. The fire brigade once again raced round, and behind the closed door of her spare room, they found Beryl's lifeless body, with lit newspapers stacked on and around her.
So again, the intent was to burn her.
It's get rid of evidence, isn't it?
Yeah.
As well. A post-mortem found that while she was likely alive at the time that the fire was started, Beryl's cause of death was from asphyxiation from manual strangulation, with noticeable bruising present on both her face and neck. And it's so hard to manually strangle someone.
It is.
I think people...
Especially with the bruises on her face as well, that means he was looking at her as he did it.
Yeah, I didn't even think of that. But I think as well, like, we see things in documentaries and in TV, like, it's hard, it takes a lot of strength and it takes time.
It takes a while to strangle someone, like...
To death, yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's why a lot of people live from it, because...
Yeah,
you know,
people don't realise like how much it takes, and they're not gonna. I mean, I don't know anyone who would lie there and just take being strangled to death. Do you know what I mean, you're
even a 75-year-old lady, but she lives alone. She's very independent.
Yeah,
she's on a top floor flat as well.
Yeah, like she's probably quite well for her age. You're not gonna just lie there and take it. You are gonna be fighting with every little bit of strength you have. You're going to be kicking them, punching them to get them off.
Yeah, it's brutal.
Yeah.
Coroner Alan Craze recorded a verdict of unlawful death on both Claire Lechford and Beryl O'Connor, going on to state, these were despicable and needless crimes against two victims who were each in their own way vulnerable. And I think the vulnerability comes from Claire being a recluse.
Yeah.
Despite being only 4 years old.
Yeah. Well, probably, like, I don't want to stereotype, but I do think, like, a woman living by yourself is always you are always going to have a little bit more vulnerability, but
even I think anyone living alone as well.
Yeah, always.
But yeah, women living alone.
Yeah. They also said that Claire's flat was unlocked as well, so she was obviously quite trusting of people just to leave her flat, or again, as you said, had let him in.
Yeah,
and it sounded like Beryl would let him in as well. So
yeah,
I'm assuming they obviously had the connection of these two murders.
I think
straight away. the similarities are just like so obvious, aren't they?
Yeah. But I'm assuming from how you started, they didn't catch Graham Fisher?
No. So after both of these murders, women in that area of Hastings were on high alert, and understandably so. There appeared to be, presumably a man, going around and killing women in brutal and random attacks in their own homes. An intensive investigation was launched, which was coined Operation Envoy, but little progress was made in regards to finding out who was responsible. Interestingly, Graham Fisher was actually interviewed at the time, presumably because he lived close to both victims.
Yeah.
And because he already had a criminal record. So, of course, they didn't know about the attacks on the woman in 1991, but they know about him attacking his ex-girlfriend and her son.
And he had been to prison for that.
Yeah.
So
he'd also lived right next door to Beryl O'Connor in the autumn of 1997. So maybe that's why she would have let him in.
Yeah, she would have already known him.
Yeah.
Like,
I would probably let my next door neighbours in. I don't really know them as people, but if they knocked on my door and said, I need to come in for X, Y, Z. However, during an interview of Fisher following the murders, police deemed him unfit to be interrogated. On a later occasion, he then declined to answer questions. I don't really know, like, sometimes I'm a bit confused when they say that. Like, can you just... I suppose you can just decline if they haven't got grounds to, like...
Yeah. If
they can't make you.
Yeah.
But it's a bit of a red flag as well.
Yeah, it's a bit suspicious. And I'm assuming they didn't go into detail why he was unfit, but you would think...
That could flag it up as well.
Again, yeah.
Yeah. Despite the arrest of 4 others for the murders, no one was ever charged, and the case remained unsolved for a decade, until Fisher's confession in 2008.
Oh, wow.
Sadly, Claire Lechford's father, Frank, died later in 1998, meaning he never got to see justice served for his beloved daughter.
That's so sad.
He never got any closure.
No. And I know it does say she was a recluse.
So I imagine
if he was her only family.
Yeah, you don't know, do you?
Yeah.
But if you thought that Graham Fisher had been quiet for the 8 days in between Claire Lechford and Beryl O'Connor's murders, you'd be wrong. On January 25th, 1998, the day before he killed Beryl O'Connor, Graham Fisher caught the 1311 train going from Hastings to London Charing Cross. Whilst on this train, Fisher saw a 19-year-old Czech student enter the toilet and managed to trick his way in behind her, where he violently attacked and attempted to rape her before leaving her unconscious. And to be honest, I think he presumed she was dead.
On a train as well.
On a train.
All places.
And train toilets are tiny. Whilst the attack happened on the train on the way to London, it wasn't until the train was headed back down south to Hastings that the young woman was found by a ticket officer from South Central Railways, who was carrying out routine checks whilst the train was stopped at Orpington Station, which is in the Bromley Borough. The ticket officer found that something was blocking the door to the onboard toilet, so
okay.
And when he was able to get it open, he saw the unconscious student with significant head injuries who had clearly suffered a brutal attack.
Oh, that's horrible.
Thankfully, the student survived, but as a result of being strangled, she suffered a stroke and was in a coma for 3 days, with her physical injuries still leaving a lasting impact on her to this day.
I'm not surprised. Like, physical injuries are going to cause complications, but also, like, the mental trauma of that.
Well, in 2010, she gave a victim statement to the Independent newspaper, where she told them that she had gone on to marry and had moved back to her home country. But after the attack by Fisher, she had to learn to speak and walk all over again, so the stroke had affected that.
Yeah.
And that she'd also been left with limited job opportunities. As I say, that's without mentioning the mental trauma. And also, when your job opportunities are limited, that also has a mental...
Well, it has like a financial strain on you as well. So,
and it probably changed her whole dreams and aspirations as well, because suddenly a lot of things are ruled out for you.
Oh my God, massively. Like, imagine if she was like training to be a lawyer. Do you know what I mean? Like something like that, or a doctor. And...
I mean, even if you think about it, anything physical, and perhaps anything where you are public facing, if you have to learn to speak again, if you've got any sort of lasting damage, that could be difficult for you. Yeah. It's just, I think so often we think, oh yeah, she was in a coma and this happened, and perhaps we think about it more because we're aware of the rehabilitation process from working in a setting. But it's huge. Oh my God, massively.
Again, Fisher would get away with this attack and attempted murder of yet another woman. In May 1998, Fisher would finally be taken off the streets when he indecently assaulted the 2 Spanish students at knife point in Eastbourne.
Which is still a horrible thing to do, but doesn't seem
It's like a de-escalation, isn't it?
Yeah.
But then they do say that people who, serial killers, go through escalation and cooling off periods.
Oh, okay. So he could have been in a cooling off period.
Yeah.
Because he's gone from like murder and arson twice to assault, like really badly assaulting, almost murdering someone on a train.
I think he thought he'd murdered her, to be honest. And he almost did.
Yeah.
And so this brings us back to 2008, when Graham Fisher divulged to officials at Broadmoor Hospital about his true past. Bear in mind, they just think, but they think that they've got this guy who's mentally unwell, but is in for probably quite, not, I don't want to say minor and like downgrade these crimes, which are, again, life-changing
really
for people. They would have left a lasting effect.
I expect they deal with, like, serial killers.
Like Peter Sutcliffe.
Yeah. Like child killers as well.
Yeah, so they're thinking they've got this guy who's relatively not low risk, I guess. And none of them are low risk, but this guy who's committed like relatively minor
and they
crimes.
probably don't see him as much of like, you probably have your people who are like, they are likely to attack guards, so they need 2 guards on them at all times.
They did actually have someone in Broadmoor who was kept in the basement and couldn't be near anyone else.
Oh, wow.
We'll cover him at some point.
Yeah.
He's interesting.
Yeah. But yeah, they probably, like, I mean, you see it all the time, like, people have to be escorted places with at least 2 guards, sometimes handcuffed to them. They're the high risk. I wonder if they were like, oh, he can, like, walk himself just under supervision of a guard because he hasn't physically attacked and murdered someone.
Exactly. And I think that's the thing. 2008, he says to them. And so police quickly got to work reviewing the cases in question, where they worked closely with the complex case unit of the Crown Prosecution Service to seek justice for these 4 women. At Lewis Crown Court in July 2010, Graham Fisher pled guilty to the manslaughter of Claire Lechford and Beryl O'Connor on the grounds of diminished responsibility. It was determined that due to the state of his mental health both in 2010 and in 1998, time of the killings, Fisher did not have capacity to be convicted of murder, hence the manslaughter charge instead.
Okay.
He was sentenced to at least 21 years. However, the sentence handed to him was actually indeterminate. So this is due to his mental state and the fact that he'll be housed in Broadmoor Hospital rather than a prison, meaning his release depends upon his mental health and how his treatment progresses.
Yeah, rather than the length.
Yeah, and this is something that actually, if you ever want to go down a bit of a rabbit hole, there was an amazing YouTube channel, which I think is closed down now, called JCS.
Okay.
And they just did a whole video where they discussed people will often plead insanity for things.
Yeah.
Particularly in America. Yeah. But will plead insanity for things.
Yeah.
Just because they think, oh, going to a hospital is cushier than going to a prison or getting a death sentence. Actually,
it's
at
hard
least
to get released.
Yeah, at least when you're in prison for a sentence, and obviously in America, life means life a bit more than it does here.
Yeah.
But you have a release date.
Yeah.
In a mental health institution, you don't. And also, if you're not mentally unwell and you're in a mental health institution, it's going to be rough.
Yeah,
and if you're not mentally
mentally
unwell when you go in, I think as a mentally well person, you're not going to fare well. But that's a bit of a tangent and something very interesting to go down if you're interested in psychology.
Yeah.
Which I guess most people who are into true crime.
Oh, probably. Yeah. I mean, we have said how they do kind of go hand in hand.
They do.
And not to play it's like that not every killer is a psychopath, but not every psychopath is a killer.
Exactly. And I think to a degree most people who kill with intent are going to be mentally unwell.
Yeah.
Because of the nature of killing with intent.
Yeah, but it doesn't mean that if you have a mental health issue or you struggle with your mental health, it doesn't mean you are automatically a bad person or a
open and
killer.
Honest about my mental health, and I suffer with mental health issues, and I am not a murderer.
Yeah.
I like to think I'm not an awful person, but I
tolerate you.
Yeah.
I feel like everyone has had a point in their life, though, where they don't feel 100% themselves, or they don't feel 100% well in themselves, even if you...
And you don't then harm others.
Yeah.
Or commit.
I think you've said it before, you are more of a harm to yourself.
Exactly.
Than others.
And Judge Justice Keith stated it could be decades before Fisher is released back into the community.
Mm.
And so now, I guess the big question is, why did he do it?
Yeah.
Well, all signs point to pleasure, really.
Mm.
After confessing his crimes to officers, Fisher told them about one victim, saying, "She looked really scared, but this really turned me on."
So yeah, it was
pleasure.
Yeah.
A forensic psychiatrist called Dr. Philip Joseph also told the court how Fisher had a sexually sadistic aspect to his personality. Alongside this statement, multiple experts would add that Graham Fisher's experiences as a child and into his teenage years would blur the lines of sexual boundaries for him, rendering him incapable of controlling himself where sexual contact was concerned, and making him very disturbed in his approach to such situations. Judge Keith would add to this by stating that Fisher was far less equipped than others to exercise willpower to control his abnormal sexual and aggressive urges. And I find this difficult to swallow. Okay, so we don't know what his diagnoses are.
No, and we don't know his childhood.
No, we don't know what he went through as a child and as a teenager, and I'm not qualified to say what control someone does or does not have over their urges when they're mentally unwell. But it just feels like a bit of an easy way out. Yeah. And I feel like, as we've said, like so many people have horrific childhoods and adolescence and then subsequently suffer mental illness. Yeah. And yet they don't always go on to rape and murder vulnerable women time and time again.
And find it enjoyable and they get off on it.
But, having said that, I guess not many people are deemed so mentally unwell that they end up under the Mental Health Act in Broadmoor Hospital.
Yeah.
And so, yes, I will leave this to the professionals. But I just had to say it stirred something up in me to have all these people high up being like, not your fault.
Yeah.
The courtroom also heard how Graham Fisher had shown remorse for his victims and how part of his reason for confession was to bring some form of closure to the victims' families. Judge Keith even went so far as to say that it was to Fisher's, quote, credit that he decided to get these terrible crimes off his chest, stating that Fisher had been concerned that he was too dangerous to be transferred from Broadmoor to a less secure hospital. I mean, I guess credit where credit's due.
I mean,
we're giving him a lot of credit is what I feel.
Yeah.
Like that's...
I mean, it's good that he's acknowledging what he's done and he realises it was wrong.
But people still have been killed and had their lives
and
altered
had
forever.
He not been caught for
the indecent assault.
How much further would he have gone?
I think he would have been a notorious
my god,
serial killer.
Yeah. I mean, how many people do you have to murder before you become a serial killer?
I think it's 3 and above.
Oh, okay.
Why do I have these answers so
that was fast.
Yeah. I think you're really realising how much I absorb true crime.
Yeah.
And have done for years.
I also am kind of questioning if his mental health was that bad and he has previously been questioned by the police. Why was he not picked up sooner as as someone who needed help? Because it sounds like
1998, man.
Yeah.
This is the thing. I think even now he would slip through the radar. And I say that because I see people slip through the system. And I don't mean dangerous people, but like people with mental health issues in general.
Yeah.
They slip through the system time and time again. And the case that we covered, Nicola Edgington, she slipped through time again.
It was a multiple failure.
Yeah, you can't just say it's one person's failure.
Yeah.
There were so many different agencies who could have stopped what happened. But I think... I think
it's hard. Yeah.
I think the underlying statement, I've said a lot, is that had he not been caught in May 1998, he would, in my opinion, be a notorious serial killer.
Yeah, he would have gone on.
You only had to add one more. I mean, he already...
He tried. He tried to...
Yeah,
kill that poor woman on the train.
Exactly. One thing I find a bit contradictory in Fisher's statement of remorse is that he initially claimed to have only been an accomplice at the murder of 75-year-old Beryl O'Connor.
Okay.
A claim that the prosecution rejected, as the amount of similarities between the killings of O'Connor and Claire Lechford suggests that these were just committed by the
same person.
I mean, this can be looked at, I sort of think it can be looked at in a few ways. Firstly, maybe Fisher is telling the truth here, and he was an accomplice rather than the murderer.
Yeah.
Considering he willingly confessed to these crimes whilst under no pressure to do so.
Yeah.
Like, why would he lie? Like, why would he need to invent another person?
Yeah.
This can be further backed up by Fisher telling officers, quote, "I'm going to plead guilty to any charges you see fit to charge me with in relation to this case." But then, that statement in itself could indicate that it was easy to pin this crime solely on Fisher. Like, the police didn't have an ongoing murder spree that, or like, they knew that they didn't have like this murderer on the loose who was still killing people that they had to get off the streets. So why not just go, yeah, we've completely closed this case. Like,
yeah.
Everyone is behind bars. Like, they've got our guy 100%. But then, of course, you've got the side of perhaps Fisher really did act alone, which to me sort of leaves like three main scenarios in my mind. So by stating he had an accomplice, this is indicative of how mentally unwell Fisher was in both 1998 and at the time of the trial. Like, he truly believed someone else was present. And this, of course, would back up that he cannot be held fully accountable. He had diminished responsibility if he's making up a whole other person.
He thought someone was there with him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Alternatively, perhaps over time, to cope with the guilt and magnitude of his actions, he had like adjusted his memory and perception of the crime and detached himself from it and put space between himself and his actions, and was able to formulate that he was an accomplice. Also, they talk about disassociation in mental health quite a lot, which is you looking on yourself. I don't know if it's if you're able, he could have been dissociating, or perhaps he's able to retrospectively dissociate. I don't know if that's a thing. Maybe I'm just making up terms.
I mean, I guess if you're locked away for that length of time with bottling it up, without talking to someone, there's no reason you couldn't.
You're not working through it.
Yeah, the mind is a very powerful thing.
Yeah, and this would make it a lot easier to deal with what he had done, because he was essentially separating himself from the murder.
Yeah. And,
forming a barrier.
Yeah.
And then, of course, there is the other option, if there wasn't someone with him.
Yeah.
That maybe he was just lying and trying to get a reduced sentence, which would completely negate how much remorse Fisher truly felt.
Yeah.
I don't think this is likely, because I think he's aware that he's not getting out of hospital anytime soon.
Yeah. I mean, if he's struggled that long with his mental health, he's not just going to confess to everything, snap his fingers, and everything's fine again.
Exactly.
It's a long process.
I think he knows he's there for the long haul.
Yeah.
Not just 21 years, but...
Yeah.
And to be honest with you, I'm sitting here trying to rationalise something that might be completely irrational.
Oh, yeah.
So...
But I think you do make a good point, though.
There's so many different avenues.
Yeah.
Like, if there was someone there, if there wasn't, you can see all the different aspects.
And it is like, why did he decide after so many years to come forward and just be like, yeah, I actually did kill those women?
Yeah.
And tried to kill that woman on the train. And
I do know that in 2007, they had reopened or were re-reviewing the case.
Yeah.
And perhaps, and this is actually just something that's sprung into my head now, perhaps that was something that sort of gave him the kick to
confess.
Yeah. Like the kick up the bum.
I wonder if they, like the police investigating it, did have kind of an idea that it was him, because he was originally questioned.
Yeah.
And it did, like, it seems like it was going to be a serial killer
and it
kind
lines
of.
Up. Now that we're talking about it, it lines up a bit with his crime in 1992.
Yeah.
In the involvement of some sort of restraint or ligature.
Yeah. Yeah, because he
there
tried
are similarities
to
already there.
her. Yeah.
The arsons, no. The
Well,
murders,
he did burn.
Yeah, and we don't know how.
Yeah.
So I feel like there were already puzzle pieces like slotting.
Yeah, and for there to be two and this attack and then a sexual like assault on women and then to all of a sudden stop.
Yeah.
It seemed like it was, I mean, obviously we know from the amount of true crime we watch and listen to that it does normally escalate. And as you said, they do have escalation and de-escalation periods. And
these women are all vulnerable. Like, even the Spanish women that he indecently assaulted and the Czech student, okay, they might not have been vulnerable in the same way as the other people, but they're not in their home country.
No.
And they're not in a place where they speak their first... It's not...
Yeah,
their
it's
first
not
language
their
isn't
first
English.
language,
And that in itself, we don't know if that is something that provides a layer of vulnerability. I'm not saying that everyone who's foreign and lives in the UK is vulnerable, but it could provide a layer.
Yeah.
There's the potential.
Definitely. It's just not knowing the area as well and not being as street smart to it as well. Like, if they were students and they'd come to the UK...
If I went out to Spain
yeah.
and was in a random area, even Madrid, I don't know what the good and bad parts are.
No.
I think in our first Ghost episode, someone messaged me, Sarah, who sent in one of the things, messaged me to say that her favourite quote from it was like, just like some people are dicks, some ghosts are dicks.
It's like, yeah.
Regardless, as I said, the prosecution outright rejected Fisher's claims of being an accomplice, and he was sent back to Broadmoor Hospital. Detective Chief Inspector Trevor Bowles of Sussex Police's Major Crime Unit summed it up when he said, "The 6 offences to which Fisher pleaded guilty demonstrate the extreme danger he poses to the public. His offences have wrecked the lives of many individuals and families."
Yeah.
Now, this is not where our story completely ends.
Oh.
Because since 2010, when he was sentenced...
I was going to say that was like, what, 12 years ago?
Yeah, I know, it's scary. Graham Fisher has had news outlets up in arms twice.
Oh.
So, once was when he's become a cook in prison. He's discovered his love of cooking. And despite not being a massive cannibal, I would say once is enough, but despite not being a massive cannibal...
I mean, how big do you have to be a massive cannibal?
I mean, maybe it's like serial killers, like 3 tries.
I mean, he said he ate some of her arm, but he didn't admit to eating any of his other victims.
No.
But who said
I
he
also didn't see anything that said it was definitely what happened. But then maybe that's how they linked to the fact that he was telling the truth. Anyway, yada, yada, yada.
Yada, yada.
But this obviously caught the attention because newspapers are going to love the headline of "Cannibal is chef."
Becomes cook,
And that's what they ran with. So he apparently likes cooking banoffee pie and chicken curries.
I love a banoffee pie.
And he wrote to a friend just telling them all about his love of cooking. And
he
you
has
know
friends?
what? Yeah.
Sorry, I didn't mean that to sound so
friends.
like mean, but he's been in like prison and then a mental hospital for a while.
I know, sometimes I don't think I have that many friends and it really makes you think, doesn't it?
I mean, I mean, after 10 years, there's some people that fall off like, who are you still talking to? But yeah, fair. Each to their own.
Yeah, so he told a friend how he loved cooking and made all these lovely dishes, and of course the newspapers ran with them.
Oh, I bet they lapped it up.
Oh yeah. I also don't know how I missed that, but then I don't mind. And there was also another scandal when basically whilst he was in hospital, he became obese. He was apparently gorging himself on crisps and chocolate, snacking constantly. And I believe he weighed like 22 stone. And he was actually approved for a gastric ban on the NHS. And this obviously caused controversy.
Yes.
And I can see why, but I sort of have 2 paths of thought on this.
Yeah.
So, first of all, it caused upset and uproar because it cost like £15,000 to taxpayers.
Yeah.
And I saw one news outlet say like, oh, he's then going to be in a private room for several days to recover. But on that note, would you want him in a bay?
Oh, God, no.
Would you want to be recovering from your gastric band or your gastric
With that
surgery?
next to you.
And then next door, you never know. So just a heads up, When a prisoner or someone from a mental health hospital comes into hospital, their officers or mental health nurse are not allowed to tell staff why they are. But people find out through all different means.
Yeah.
And, okay, the people next door in the bay are never going to know.
But
it's just...
they'll see
there's a security risk there, isn't there?
They'll see that they're being escorted, whether that is by a mental health nurse or by an officer.
Often people are handcuffed, they're shackled. And even if they're in a side room, it's just, you would want him away from other people.
Yeah.
And I think that's the thing. It's very easy for a news outlet to be like, in a private place.
I mean, I think it's hard for us to imagine because obviously most of the rooms at the hospital we work at are private rooms. Our patients are very lucky that it's quite a modern hospital and we can provide private rooms for people, and there's not many bays. And the bays.
I've worked in hospitals where on a ward you've got 4 side rooms, and they are just for people who are infection risk or end of life.
Yeah.
So
whereas you go to like the old part of the hospital and you've got a bay of 15 beds.
Exactly, like Florence Nightingale wards.
Yes.
And that's the thing. So to that point, it's very easy for a newspaper who has no idea about stuff like that. Yeah, and also they're selling newspapers, they're sensationalising.
Oh, yeah.
And also, obviously there's the whole efficacy of should a murderer get treatment like a gastric band, but it comes back to his mental health and the urges that he has been deemed to not able to control. It
also,
may not be...
he is still a human at the end of the day.
Yeah, but I suppose what people are saying is he should lose weight. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But if he's someone who can't control sexual urges, perhaps he can't control urges.
Yeah.
And he can't maybe lose weight as easily as you or I. Also, I imagine in a secure mental health hospital, eating might be the only thing
that he can do. Yeah. Or it might be his only pleasure that he can have.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah.
And so that was also another thing. When you look up this case, I think the main things that come up is now a chef and had a gastric band. And it's like, great. Maybe talk about the victims a little bit.
Yeah, that is sad that that's almost like people are getting so angry at the fact that he's had a gastric band, but they're not angry at the fact that he murdered 2 women and attempted to murder 2 more. But
what sells more newspapers? Like, I mean, the NHS is always going to be something that's a massive talking point in the UK.
Yeah, but you can't, just because someone has been criminally convicted of something, they are still a human, you can't refuse to treat them, because otherwise you're lowering yourself to their standard.
And this is actually why nurses and doctors aren't told what their patients have done, and also why part of our guidelines are that you treat everyone the same. Everyone gets the same level of treatment and care.
Yeah.
And that is because you can't discriminate against anyone.
No.
And basically it's because, okay, we all probably have that line of murder is bad. Yeah. But it stops the grey area of, okay, well, I don't agree. It's not me saying it. Do not isolate this. But someone saying, I do not agree with gay people. Yeah. Therefore, I will not treat a gay person. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? So if we say that we treat everyone the same, we treat everyone, then there is no greyness. There's no grey areas.
No.
So, that concludes the case of Graham Fisher. And I think it's a really difficult one because so little is known about what his mental health diagnosis actually is. But I wanted to cover it because it is twisty, turny, and lesser known. So,
I think this was the most what if one we've had. Yeah. There's so many times where it could have been different. Like if they had any indication that it was him on the first murders, then it wouldn't have happened. Also, if he hadn't confessed, would this case still be open? If he hadn't been caught
would he have been released back into community?
Yeah, if he hadn't been caught for the sexual assault,
it definitely would have.
Like would he have carried on? Like
no doubt,
no doubt that he would. But you like to think like how high would the tally have still been?
I also think it highlights the need for mental health services in this country and all countries. Because
definitely.
Had he... So, okay, he had a bad childhood. Obviously, it was the 90s. No, it was the 70s, sorry. It was the 70s and 80s, and things have come a long way, but they've got a long way to go.
Yeah, but there would still have been, like, the foster system, the social...
But I don't think it would have been brilliant. Oh, no. And I don't think it's all that... I'm not saying it's not brilliant, but I think even people within... I'm not actually attributing any failures to necessarily the people working in it. I know it's the red tape a lot of the time.
Yeah.
And there's different factors in play. But I think this highlights the need for proper mental health care for people, and when they're young. Because I like to think, maybe I'm being very positive.
Yeah.
But I like to think that had a child knowingly, and perhaps no one knew, but had a child had an awful childhood and an awful adolescence that caused such severe mental health issues and caused him... I mean, I feel like there was obviously sexual assault in his childhood, because otherwise why was there blurring of the lines there? That nowadays they might get a bit more help.
Yeah.
And this would stop someone's mental health deteriorating to the point of this. This
for
happening.
Sure. Yeah.
And I think it just highlights the need for looking after people's mental health when they're young, but also at the point of when it starts to deteriorate.
Yeah.
It's something we're still not great at.
No.
But I think it's hopefully come a long way since the 70s.
Yeah. I feel like it is getting better, but there is still a long way to go.
Yeah. And unfortunately, the pandemic has caused...
It's almost it's like it was taking 2 steps forwards and now we've taken 1 giant step back. Hopefully the more we talk about it and it becomes like a norm to talk about mental health,
and I do think that is a really positive thing that we're seeing with our generation, but actually generations below us, so we're millennials. I think the generations coming after us as millennials, I think that is something that is really good. They are speaking more about their mental health issues.
And it
maybe
shouldn't
perhaps
be such a
because
taboo,
they've got platforms too as well. When we were growing up, it wasn't until I was 16 that I got Facebook.
And even then, Facebook wasn't...
Oh, you had I always think back to what Facebook was like, and you had like all these different emojis on your page, and it was like...
Yeah, and
it wasn't even emojis, it was like...
It was everything as well. Like, you put your life on Facebook. Like, it was... You would put a status, you didn't have direct messages, so you wrote on people's walls.
Yeah, you would literally put a status like, is hungry.
Yeah, literally, because it would be like, how are you feeling? And then you'd be like, feeling hungry. And then
it's like Claudia, and then like, and so it'd be like, so my status is like, is feeling really hungry, LOL. Like, who cares, Claudia? Like, 2008 Claudia, who cares?
And like, did you ever have Bebo?
No, I have MySpace and Pixar.
Okay, so on Bebo, you literally had like your top friends and your
that's what MySpace had.
Yeah, and then you could give people love, and I was like, that was so damaging for so many people's mental health. If you put someone in your top friends and then you weren't in theirs, and you gave them and
people would have like top friend of the week, and
but
people would also make like MySpace pages, and like they'd have like person of the week, like friend of the week, and it's But my point is now, people are able to connect with other people who are suffering the same way as them. And even if they can't get to a counsellor, they can share.
Yeah.
Like,
there's
when
safe
we were growing
places
up,
to go.
Yeah, I have amazing parents who I could always talk to about my mental health. And I think that's why I'm so high functioning. But had I not had that, I wouldn't have had someone I couldn't have gone on Twitter, said, feel really down, feel blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
And had strangers, like I can now, come back and say, I feel the same way. I couldn't have gone onto Facebook and found a support group.
Yeah.
I couldn't have gone on TikTok and seen videos about ADHD and all this. They just did not exist.
And I think
social media is bad in many ways, but actually let's praise it for a second, because it gives people... If you can't afford counselling, or you don't have family and friends,
or you don't know where to go,
no, you've got people who understand you, and in a way, sharing is like a problem shared, it's a problem halved.
Oh yeah, I love that saying because it is so true.
Yeah, and that's the thing. I think, if anything, this case, like I said, just highlights the need for proper mental health care.
Yeah.
Because all this maybe could have been avoided if he was born.
Had he had the support. Yeah.
In a time where support was more available.
Yeah.
And I think maybe that helps us.
Yeah.
So here at True Crime Coven, I hope it's clear by now that we are massive mental health allies. As I mentioned earlier, I struggle with my own mental health issues, and I think it's always important to be able to get support. We would love to be able to say that we are always your support, but we are two people. So
I mean, feel free to message us.
You're always free to message
just to get
us.
off your chest.
But you'd be better off messaging some professionals.
Yeah.
So if you guys do need any support at any time with your mental health, you can of course go to.
So there is Young Minds. You can get in contact them by just texting YM to 85258. That is YM to 85258. And all texts are answered by trained volunteers with support from experienced clinical supervisors.
So if you don't feel comfortable calling on the phone, like lots of our generation don't, no worries, you can have a text exchange.
It's a free text. You don't have to pay any, there's no additional cost for that.
That's good.
Yeah.
You can also call Samaritans anytime, day or night, and you'll always have someone on hand to just listen to how you're feeling. You can call them on 116 123. You can also get in contact with Papyrus. They're the prevention of young suicide, and they offer advice and support for young people who feel like they want to take their own life. All their advice is completely confidential. And you can call their helpline on 0800 068 4141. You can also text them if you prefer on 07786 209 687.
You can also contact CALM, which stands for Campaign Against Living Miserably. You can call this helpline from 5 p.m. till midnight, and that is 365 days a year. Their number is 0800 585858, and their helpline is for anyone living in the UK who feel like they're down or hit a wall and they need someone to talk to for information and support.
And I also think it's worth saying that in the past when I struggled, I did just call 111 if you're in the UK, and they can be really amazing as well. Above all else, just look after yourself. There's still a hell of a lot of stigma around mental health.
Massively.
And you know what? If you broke your leg, go and get it looked at. If you had a sore throat, you might go and get it looked at.
Yeah.
If you've got a bit of a poorly brain, go and get it looked at. Just look after yourselves and take care.
Even if it's something that doesn't seem like a big deal to you, it can escalate, so it's better to stop it as soon as you start feeling it. Same as any illness. Yeah. Prevention is the best cure.
Prevention is better than cure.
It is.
Well, thank you for listening, everyone. If you have a case to suggest or a ghost story, you can email us at truecrimecovenpod@gmail.com.
You can also find us on Twitter at truecrimecoven,
or on Instagram at truecrimecovenpod. We are so thankful for everyone who is listening.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you for your support, and absolutely you don't have to, but if you would like to donate anything to the podcast, you can do so by going to ko-fi.com/truecrimecovenpod. That's ko-fi.com/truecrimecovenpod. Thanks for listening.
Stay spooky!